Right, it's now 5 o'clock, so I'll pass you to the chair to start the meeting. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Lynn. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting. I'm Councillor Heather Scott. I'm Leader of the Council and Chairman for this evening's meeting. If I can ask Lynn to go around everybody so that you can introduce yourselves, please.
Right, Councillor Clark.
I'm Councillor John Clark, lead member for Children and Young People.
Thank you. Councillor Dulston.
Hi, I'm Councillor Dulston, Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Member for Stronger Communities.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, Councillor Johnson, I'm Cabinet Member for Resources.
Thank you. Councillor Keir.
Hi, I'm Andy Keir. I'm the Council Member responsible for local services.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall.
Hi everybody, I'm Alan Marshall, Cabinet Member for Economy.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mills.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Mills. I'm the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nicholson.
Hi, I'm Kevin Nicholson. I'm the Cabinet Member with responsibility for health and housing.
Thank you, Councillor. And then Councillor Mrs Scott, who's already introduced herself. We have another number of other members in attendance. We've got Councillor Curry.
Hello, Anne-Marie Curry, Councillor Curry, Group Leader for the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harker.
Hello, I'm the Labour Group Leader and Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Snedker.
Hello, Councillor Snedker for College Ward and Group Leader for Greens.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tate.
Hello, elected member for Eastbourne Ward and Leader of the Independent Group.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Durham.
Hello, I'm Councillor for Brinkburn and Furverdale and the Chair of the Economy and Resources Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazeldine.
Councillor Hazeldine, Stevenson Ward and Shadow Portfolio Holder.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a number of officers in attendance also. Paul Wildsmith.
Good evening, I'm Paul Wildsmith, I'm the Council's Managing Director.
Thank you. Ian Williams.
Good evening, I'm Director of Economic Growth and Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you. James Stroyan.
Hello, I'm Director of Children and Adult Services.
Thank you. Elizabeth Davison.
Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Davison, Assistant Director for Resources.
Thank you. And Luke Swinhoe.
Good evening, everyone. Luke Swinhoe, Assistant Director, Law and Governance.
Thank you. I'll pass you over to the Chair for the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you, everybody. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? If you could raise your hands if you have. Can't see any hands up. Thank you. Item number 3 is to hear relevant representations from members and the general public on items on the Cabinet agenda. We have got Councillor Durham here and he is going to speak on item 8C. So, Scott, I will call you when we get to that item. Item 4 is to approve the minutes of the meeting of the Cabinet held on Tuesday the 12th of January. Can I have someone who can move this as a correct record, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Anybody, any comments or anything to raise on the, on the minutes? Okay, can we agree? Okay, thank you very much. Item 5, matters referred to Cabinet. There are no matters referred back for consideration at this meeting. Item 6, issues from scrutiny. As I said, Councillor Durham is going to speak on item 8C. Item number 7 is the annual audit letter. And this evening we have with us Helen Hanshaw from Ernst & Young. Is your colleague with you as well, Helen, or not? Are you here solo?
Just me this evening, Councillor.
Right, okay. Well, if you'd like to speak to the audit letter, and then I'll get Councillor Johnson to move the recommendations. Thank you, Helen. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The annual audit letter is a document required to be prepared by the external auditors, which effectively summarises the results of the external audit for the year once our audit opinion has been passed. So our audit opinion was issued on the year ended 31st of March 2020, financial statements of the council at the back end of November. And this report summarises the results of the work performed to get to that point. I'll just quickly talk you through the contents of the report. On page 22, as it's marked in your pack, or page 4 of our report, depending on how you're looking at it, we, as you would anticipate, we made some amendments to our audit plan to be cognizant of the fact that in the last couple of weeks of the financial year ended 31st March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic had hit and the country had gone into lockdown. So there were changes made at a national scale in respect of the reporting timescales around financial statements, which meant that ordinarily where you would have published your audited accounts by the end of July, there was recognition that that was, you know, in most cases unachievable, and the date was pushed back to the 30th of November. I'm pleased to say that Darlington stuck to those revised timescales, and the audit report was issued in line with those revised timescales, accounting for the COVID-19 delays. We also needed to consider other areas of the accounts where COVID-19 might put extra a degree of risk or stress on the financial statements. And those areas particularly was impacting the valuation of the property, plant and equipment due to the levels of uncertainty that COVID-19 poses on markets which are used to value those assets, and also in respect of the disclosures which the council needed to put into the financial statements to talk about its going concern position and its reserves and liquidity look forward for the 12 months following the point of approval of the financial statements. Page 23 of your pack sets out the opinions that we have issued. So we issued an unqualified opinion on the financial statements, which effectively says that we believe that they give a true and fair view of the financial position of the council and the results of its operations in the year that was then ended. We were happy that the other information published with the financial statements, which effectively incorporates the narrative report, was consistent with the financial statements themselves and also with our knowledge of the council. And we passed a separate conclusion on the value for money arrangements which the council has in place, and we concluded that those arrangements were appropriate, and we've got nothing specific to comment in respect of those arrangements. We didn't need to report in any way in terms of matters which we might have taken exception to, and there were no other reporting matters that needed to be made in our role as external auditor. We do a small amount of work with respect to the National Audit Office and the consolidation of Darlington Borough Council's finances into the whole of government accounts due to the small level of the council. The work performed on that is really quite insignificant. If I just scoot us on, if I may, to page 29 in the report as it's labelled in your pack, this just revisits the areas of the audit which were particularly significant and required the most amount of attention and audit procedures to be performed. Now, the first one there labelled significant risk misstatements due to fraud or error. This is not a risk which is specific to Darlington Borough Council, but is a risk that all auditors are required to identify on every audit. We perform particular testing around the position that management are in terms of their ability to circumvent systems of control in order to generate a particular outcome in the financial statements. We look at the journals that are posted by various members of the team and identify those on a risk basis to which might appear unusual or otherwise outside of the normal course of business. And we didn't identify any issues with regard to that particular risk. The next page, page 30, sets out the other item which we identified as a significant risk, which again is not specific to Darlington, but is mandated by auditing standards as being a risk we have to identify. And that's called the risk of fraud in revenue and expenditure recognition. And that's effectively the risk of booking either income or expenditure inappropriately in the financial statements in order to give a better picture of whether the council is performing well. I didn't identify any particular issues with our testing in that regard. We identified a small number of issues in the housing revenue account statement, which are just noted on the report there, but these were corrected by management in the final set of accounts and were well below our materiality limits. As I mentioned before, we also identified the valuation of land and buildings and the investment property as a risk, mostly to do with the COVID-19 situation and the difficulty valuers were having at that point in terms of drawing their estimates in terms of valuations of properties. We did identify some small low-level errors with regards to the work that we performed in those areas, and those were corrected by management. In addition, we did notice an issue with an overstatement in the valuation of heritage assets, which is noted in the report. I think it's appropriate to just explain for those who are not quite so familiar with accounting for valuation of assets in a local authority set of accounts, that an error or a misstatement in the valuation of an asset actually has no impact whatsoever on the outturn of the council for the year, or is neither is it a driver of council tax setting. On page 31, some other areas that we focus on are the pension liability valuation. You'll be aware that the pension liability on the council's balance sheet is a very large number, £186 million, and is largely derived from a complex set of actuarial estimations and assumptions at any given point in time. We performed procedures to ensure the robustness of that process and the assumptions within it, and we're happy that the disclosures are appropriate and the liability is at a reasonable amount. In terms of group accounting, we considered the boundary of the component organisations which the council have consolidated into their accounts for the March 2020 year end, and again had no issues to report. Page 32 sets out the considerations in respect of going concern. This one might seem quite an odd one to consider. It seems, somewhat unlikely that Darlington Borough Council would not be a going concern going forward, but this is more about disclosing the risks to the reader of the accounts to make it absolutely clear what level of uncertainty there is in terms of the council's ability to maintain its level of reserves and also maintain its cash flow over the going concern period, which is a period of 12 months from when the accounts are signed. So we did a great deal of work looking at the cash flow arrangements of the council and its position for managing the COVID-19 pressures and looking at reserves. And as a result, we were able to stay silent in respect of going concern in our audit opinion. Just to clarify, on page 33, the materiality level that we set when we perform our work, because you'll appreciate we don't test every single balance within the council's financial statements. We set a materiality level, and that was based on 2% of the council's gross operating expenditure, which is a fairly standard for the industry, and that gave us a level of 4.6 million. We then scale that down in terms of our detailed testing of transactions, and anything over £232,000 in terms of an audit difference was reported to the audit committee. Section Section 4 on page 34 of your pack talks a little bit more detail about the value for money arrangements and the work that we do in order to form that conclusion. And the risk we identified there was labelled financial sustainability and was really looking at the ability of the council to set a balanced budget over the short to medium term, and what the council was doing to effectively monitor that situation and to identify and track and plan for savings. And as you can see there, we were comfortable that the arrangements were sufficiently in place, that there was no need for us to report any exceptions in our audit report. The next section of the report just talks about other reporting issues, which as part of our remit as external auditor, we need to consider and report upon. There's nothing of particular interest there. There was no need to report any exceptions or make any reports in the public interest or written recommendations or anything of that sort. we didn't receive any objections to the March 2020 financial statements from from members of the public, and we've confirmed to management and to the audit committee throughout the course of the audit that we, in our view, we remain independent of Darlington Borough Council and therefore are still in an appropriate professional position to deliver the external audit from an independence point of view. I then flick you through section 7 of the report is really just for your interest on what's happening in the market more generally. Section 8 of the report talks about the audit fee, and just to explain, put a little bit more context around the audit fee, which is set out on page 43. So the Darlington Borough Council entered into an arrangement with an organisation called Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited, who effectively manage the appointment and fee setting for external audit for the vast majority of local authorities within England. The fee that Public Sector Appointment, or PSAA as they are known, set is called the scale fee. For those of you who keep abreast of financial press, you'll be aware that there's been a lot of noise in the financial press about the setting of fee levels by PSAA, particularly for the public sector audit market. There is ongoing dialogue between myself, management, and also the PSAA at Darlington, but also that's than every single council up and down in terms of how the scale fee needs to move in future to ensure a sustainable delivery of good quality external work. The figure that I have talked about in note 1 on this page is reflecting just that, our view of what the scale fee should be in order to properly recompense for an audit of an organisation of the size and the risk base of Darlington Borough Council. That's a number which goes to the PSAA for them to consider and factor into their scale fee setting. The additional fee of £13,000, which is noted at note 2 on page 43, is what would be traditionally put in front of the Cabinet in this annual audit letter, which is effectively the additional costs of specific one-off work that had to be done in the current year of audit over and above what would have been assumed in the scale fee. And for this year, that included additional work that we had to do as a result of COVID-19 impacting the risk assessment at the council, the consultations that were required to consider the going concern disclosures, etc., which I've talked about, and the impact of the work that needed to be done on the asset evaluations. That figure has been discussed in detail with management and agreed, and has gone to PSAA for their final determinant on that. And at that point, I will stop, Chair, and ask you if anybody would like to ask any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Helen. Does anybody have any questions to Helen? I can't see any hands up, Helen. So could I ask Councillor Johnson to move the report and to make any comments if he wishes? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Helen, and your team for the work that you've carried out. I'm not surprised, in fact, by the positive outcome, as I know the officers here work hard to ensure the Council's resources are used efficiently and effectively. However, it is nice to have it confirmed by an external source. I move the report as recommended in paragraph 5 for the reasons given in paragraph 6.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Helen, for your attendance. I'm sure you don't want to sit through the rest of the meeting, but you're very welcome to if you wish.
I will depart. Thank you for the offer. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we move on to key decisions. Item 8A, schools admissions. Councillor Clark.
Yes, hi. The purpose of this report is to seek members' approval for the local authorities' admission arrangements for 2022-2023 academic year for maintained schools in the borough, as recommended in paragraph 3 for reasons given in paragraph 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Are there any questions to Councillor Clark from anybody? Councillor Curry.
Thank you. On page 62, there's in-year transfers. I don't need to know the exact number, but would you be able to tell me if it's below 10 or over 10 in the in-year transfers for last year?
I can't give you that information now. I'd have to check on that. I don't know if James would know that figure.
No, I don't off the top of my head, John. We'll need to come back with that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8B, Housing Revenue Account. Councillor Nicholson. I'm getting feedback from somebody. Can you make sure that your microphones are switched off? Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Sorry, I'm not sure. I've turned mine on. Are you okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, that's fine.
Perfect, thank you. I'd like members to note the contents of the report relating to the housing revenue account. The purpose of the report is to consider proposals for the housing revenue budget, rent levels, service charges, and in relation to the housing revenue financial plan up to 24-25. That's a mouthful. I would ask members to note the recommendations in paragraph 4 and to support those recommendations as detailed in paragraph 5. Thanks, Chair.
Seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any questions to Councillor Nicholson? No, I can't see any hands up. Is that agreed? Thank you. The next item is item number 8, the medium-term financial plan, and this is down to me. I would like to propose the medium-term financial plan for 2021-22 and 2024-25 to be forwarded to Council on the 18th of February. And doing so, I would just like to make some comments. The plan shows the Council is financially stable for the next 4 years. However, there are risks and challenges. Obviously, COVID-19, the impact on our economy, elderly population, and pressure that all councils face in children's social care sector. We're continuing to invest in the Futures Fund, 1.64 million, to stimulate growth in line with our top priority of growing the economy to deliver our long-term vision for Darlington be successful. We are able to deliver this due to the additional government COVID funding, strong sound management and savings achieved. And this is really down to the hard work from Elizabeth and her team, and that was confirmed in the audit report. Council tax increase of 1.99 is to cover the cost of inflation and increased demand on services. The 3% social care precept is to assist towards increasing social care pressures. Consultations resulted in overall support for. However, there was a minority view from Economy and Resources Scrutiny, which supported the increases, but requested Cabinet to note that they are necessary and not to apply the levy would have had an impact on our most vulnerable in our community. And I'm quite sure that there will be comments on that when I do call the councillor. We will continue to lobby on this issue. I'm sorry, I'm getting messages on my screen to say that I'm having problems with the connection. Can everybody still hear me? Yes. I don't know whether it's the snow that's affecting it. It keeps flashing across my screen. So I move the recommendations in paragraph 7 for the reasons in paragraph 8. Councillor Durham, do you want to comment now? Or do you want to wait until see whether there are any other comments? Councillor Durham.
I'm happy to wait, Chair.
Right, okay. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, I've got a seconder. Councillor Dalston. You're on mute, Jonathan.
if I have £1 for every time you say that. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make comment on paragraph 28 of the report, which outlines our plans to allocate £50,000 to the newly formed Stronger Communities Fund. This is an exciting initiative that we are launching to ensure councillors are equipped to support and enhance grassroots community projects and initiatives. Each member will be allocated £1,000, which can be put to various good causes that will sustain, enhance and develop all wards across our borough. This council is committed to ensuring our communities become stronger and more resilient, and we believe that this fund will enable us to further support residents as we move forward. Whether it's a small scouts group, an over 60s bingo group, or creating unique community events like Furthermore Alive, we want to hear from you. Residents and communities are at the heart of everything we do, and we hope this fund is seen as a positive step forward in our ambitions to deliver success for Darlington. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dunstan. Anybody else who wishes to comment? Councillor Harker.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. There's two comments I wanted to make, one of which was I may or may not wish to say, depending on how Councillor Durham reports back from scrutiny. So with your permission, if I can give my other comment and possibly come back depending on what Councillor Durham says in terms of the feedback from scrutiny, if I may, because I was assuming that he would speak first.
Yes, all right, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. The comment I wanted to make was that traditionally most of the political debate happens at council later on, and I will pursue that same course of action. I just wanted to make a comment today in terms of some of the process of this budget, and in particular referring to paragraphs 25 through to 29, which are the under the heading of additional budget provisions. It's not a comment about the merits or dismerits of the items within that. It's more about the process that's gone through and that they're on the budget paper today. One of those items, which is about junior swims, is an item that arose during the scrutiny process, and I understand why it's been latterly added to the budget because comments were made, and I think clearly Councillor Johnson agreed with those comments, and it's been amended at this stage. The other four items are not issues that occurred through the consultation process. They're not issues that were raised by scrutiny. And indeed, I would argue that they're long-standing issues that were well known about long before the initial draft budget came out in December last year. I'm concerned about this because clearly the annual budget process sets out the council's broad spending plans for the coming year and gives the public the opportunity to comment on those plans as a whole. Adding items late in the process deny the public and indeed the scrutiny process the opportunity to contribute and to comment on those big budget items, and not forgetting that those four items are not shy of £1 million. It's some £850,000 of additional expenditure that's been added to the budget at this late stage after the public consultation has closed. And because I have that concern, I just wanted to use this opportunity to ask what the reasons are that they've been added at this point in the budget process rather than being identified at the very beginning when the public would have had the opportunity to comment on those items. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Elizabeth, would you like to comment?
Certainly, Chair. I'll particularly comment with regard to the ICT Architecture Fund. I know Councillor Harker said that they were known at the time of the budget setting. This wasn't known. It certainly wasn't known at the time of budget setting. We have been doing a lot of work on COVID and the cost of COVID, and this actually came out after that the equipment that we are using, if we want to move forward on agile working, would require some refresh, and the PCs that we have in the office environment are far cheaper than the laptops that we had. Now, we could have left the architecture fund and just looked at it through budget management and actually requested it through there. Just thought it was more transparent just to put it in the budget here, but it could have just been done through budget management. Just wanted to highlight it to show it was there. With regard to climate change was actually mentioned in one of the scrutiny committees. I believe it was the first one. But Councillor Harker is correct. I can't see it minuted, and I have checked that. But I know that Councillor Lee had actually raised it, and it had been talked about in one of the scrutiny committees. With regard to the Stronger Communities Fund, I'm sure Councillor Dunstan will corroborate this, but I certainly wasn't aware of that at the time of when the first MTFP draft was pulled together in November time. And again, the change fund as well, because we are underspending more than we thought in Q3, and therefore that feeds into this MTFP, we thought it was an ideal opportunity to actually highlight it here and get it both through the MTFP instead of through revenue budget management.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on point number 26 around the junior swim, and I'd just like to thank Scrutiny for looking into that issue. It was an issue that come to you guys, and you looked at it, and I think the right decision's been made to keep those costs at what they are. And I think that's something for Scrutiny to celebrate, that actually something's come back to Cabinet and that's been reconsidered. Just on the Stronger Communities Fund process, I think it's a really, really positive step forward. And I know Councillor Tate will probably make some more comments, but I'm just a little bit concerned that Councillor Harker's only comment on the Stronger Communities Fund, which will really, really help some vulnerable people in our communities, is only commented about the procedure of how that's been added to the budget. I think I might just remind Councillor Harker that he's no longer in control of the council, and perhaps he's struggling with that, and that's perhaps an answer to his question as to why he doesn't know why it's been added to the budget. But I think it's a fantastic opportunity and it should be celebrated, and I'm really disappointed with his comments.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Tate.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the Stronger Communities Fund. I think it's a fantastic project that the independents have worked with yourself on to secure for all members across all wards. I think from small projects to larger projects, if councillors want to group their money, will be beneficial to many residents across Darlington, and it is one that we welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Tate. Councillor Durham, would you like to make your comments now?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Harker obviously mentioned something which he was expecting me to bring up. As part of the consultation process, every scrutiny committee was asked to review the MTFP, particularly the line items which were relevant to their committee, but they were also asked to make comment on the recommendations which are contained within paragraph 7 of this report. Now, on the 6th of January, the Economy and Resources Scrutiny Committee had their first review, and then on the 19th we reconvened and took into consideration the comments and feedback from all of the scrutiny committees. And at that time, we were under the impression that all scrutiny committees had agreed with the recommendations as contained within paragraph 7. Subsequently, the chair of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee has spoken with me and formally written to me to advise that there was a misunderstanding in terms of what was being asked at their scrutiny committee, and it seems to be the misunderstanding was in and around the recommendations, and they weren't aware that they were being asked to make recommendations. The chair has confirmed that there was a majority of members who have fed that back, and on asking them the simple question, their comment has been they didn't have an opinion on the recommendations. Going back, looking at obviously the changes that have subsequently been made to the MTFP, I think there obviously there is a lot of positives in there. Scrutiny would have liked to have been able to review those, but we do appreciate, this is a moving piece, and the MTFP which we were being asked was at a moment in time, and these changes have come to light after the event. What I would say is that obviously the recommendations which you mentioned, Chair, in paragraph 65 and in 66, they represent the views of the Economy and Resources Scrutiny Committee after taking into consideration the comments and views from other scrutiny committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. Councillor Harker, I will allow you to come back if you just want to comment on that, but just purely on that issue.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I will just very briefly, can I thank Councillor Durham for relaying the discussion that was had at the second of those two scrutiny committees where Councillor Hughes came to speak. And I just wanted to emphasise the point that having spoken to other members, I don't think it was solely members on her scrutiny committee meeting. Other members I spoke to were thought that what they were agreeing to at the end of their meetings was the discussion that they'd had on particular issues that had been raised about the particular portfolio, and they didn't appreciate that in being asked to agree the recommendations that they were being asked to give a view on the council tax rise. So I think it's what I'm trying to say is I think for many members it's not that they didn't have a view, it's that they didn't believe that they were being asked to give a view. I'm sure all members have a view about the levels of council tax. I think the point I'm making is that a number of members through that process didn't appreciate that that's what they were being asked and thought they were being asked merely to confirm the discussion that they'd had, which was largely around the service provision for those particular scrutiny committees. Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Councillor Harker. Anybody else who wants to comment, and then I will wind up. Yes, Councillor Snedker.
Yes, thank you very much. The comment I'd like to make is regarding the climate change working group and the funding that's come forward there. We have had a very constructive meeting of the climate change group. We've had two now, and I've really pleased to report to Cabinet that the group is working well. I don't intend to speak much about that. However, this funding is very important and very welcome, and we've already started discussions about using that money to pump prime projects, and I think it's very important that all members of this group have agreed that these projects will not only save carbon but also save money, and the lines within the climate change action plan which talk about recycling financial savings from climate change actions is vital, because that's a positive cycle. That's a virtuous circle of action by this council, where not only are we making people's lives better now and better for the future, but also we're saving money and investing that money in new schemes going forward. So I strongly recommend that line in the report, and I'm very glad to see that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hedger. Anybody else who would like to comment? No, if I can just wind up the comments. First of all, Councillor Harker, I would hope that you will be supporting the funding that's going into climate change, because as Councillor Snedker has just commented, there hasn't been any funding into this group before, because we hadn't really got the plan. Now we have got the plan, and obviously it does need funding to support it. Yes, there is some flexibility within the budget, because obviously we've had the majority of the funding back from the government from COVID, which gives us a little bit of flexibility to do extra items. And as far as the Stronger Communities Fund, I think this is very important. It's something that was in our manifesto when we were elected. We said we would like to give all ward councillors some funding to be able to identify things in their wards, small amounts, as Councillor Dulston has said. And I think this is in line with what we're trying to do within the communities. Obviously, there has been a lot of pressure because of COVID. Some of the smaller organisations in different wards have lost funding because they haven't been able to raise any money. And I think this gives councillors the flexibility to identify things in their wards where they can help. So I would hope when it does come to the council meeting, Councillor Harker, that you will support these. Just on the comments of the scrutiny committees, this process is the same that it's always been, and certainly under the previous administration, that the MTFP goes to each scrutiny committee. Yes, they can comment on the areas that they obviously are responsible for. But as I understand it, each scrutiny committee was asked to approve the recommendations. And even the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee did approve those, because we've actually listened to the report, because as you are aware, all committees are now recorded, and we've listened to the recording, and there was a specific question asked: do you approve the recommendations? It's down to the chairman of each scrutiny committee to make sure that the members on their scrutiny committee understand just exactly what they're approving. So I take exception to the comment that you've made, Councillor Harker. Quite a lot of your group have been councillors for a very long time. They're all members of scrutiny committee. They know exactly what the procedure is. Yes, obviously there is the opportunity, and I think that Councillor Durham did take that there was a minority view when it came to his committee. But quite frankly, if the chairs of scrutinies don't understand what their responsibility is, perhaps it's about time they had some training. And I think all the other scrutiny committees, this was the only one where there was any comment made from any of the chairs of the scrutiny committee. We have taken on board the minority view, but I think, you know, that in future the chairs of the committees should understand just exactly what they're asking the members of their scrutiny committees to approve. Can I have an agreement of the MTFP, please? Thank you very much indeed. Item number 8D, which is the Darlington Capital Strategy. And again, I would propose for the 2021-2022 Capital Strategy and Capital Programme to be forwarded to Council on the 18th of February. The strategy provides an overview of capital expenditure and financing plans for the development, management and monitoring of the Council's investment plans. I would like to highlight the plans for housing, the housing stock, roads and highways, investment and the Railway Heritage Quarter. And I would like to move paragraph 7 for the reasons in paragraph 8. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm still having problems with my screen. I keep getting flashes across to say I'm actually losing connection. So I hope that you can all hear me. Can I have a seconder, please, for the report?
Seconded.
Thank you. Are there any comments on the report? No. Is that agreed? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the calendar of council and committee meetings for 2021-22. The report has been circulated. I would like to move the recommendations, and if I could have a seconder, please. Are there any comments? I think everybody has obviously got a copy of the calendar, and we did consult everybody, so I presume everybody's happy with that. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 10, prudential indicators and treasury management strategy. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. My report is one of a statutory trio that is reported to Cabinet and Council over the year. This report is the first and most important, as it is looking forward and outlines the capital plans, the prudential indicators, treasury management strategy and investment strategies. The treasury management function ensures that the short-term cash flow is planned and managed effectively, and that future capital plans are financed in the most economic way. The report highlights that the Council's expenditure plans and treasury activity are in line with the Code of Practice, an integral part of the MTFP, and more importantly, prudent, affordable and sustainable. I move the recommendations in paragraph 4 for the reasons given in paragraph 5. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any questions on the report? No, I can't see any hands up. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item number 11, project position statement. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you again, Chair. I would like to advise members of just some of the important content of my report. Significantly, the overall capital budget of 262 million is projected to outturn slightly under budget, which is good news. Members can review in paragraph 20 the breakdown of the budget across the service areas and the category of spending. We have 9 live projects at CP4 stage which are substantially complete but remain at this stage until they are signed off. Only one project is beyond tolerances, and that is Engineering Park, where there is a drainage issue which can only be rectified during certain times of the year to suit ecological constraints. I believe it's Newts. Appendix 1 details information on individual projects such as start and end dates. I move the report as recommended in paragraph 6 for the reasons given in paragraph 7.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Seconded.
Seconded.
Yeah. Any questions to Councillor Johnson? No, I can't see any hands up. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 12, revenue budget monitoring. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you again, Chair. It's a bit of a mouthful. This is the Q3 forecast of the current year revenue outturn, and I'm pleased to report a positive position. Despite our extensive actual and predicted COVID costs, we have received 8.682 million from government and a further 2.681 anticipated. We've also been successful in securing a 1 million grant from the Arts Council England to support the Hippodrome Theatre this future year. There is still significant uncertainties in relation to COVID, and that any surplus that may be in this financial year will be placed into an earmarked fund to cover future COVID pressures, as it is clear the impact will be with us in 2021-22 and potentially beyond. In relation to non-COVID activity, it is pleasing to say all departments are online or are underspending against budget, testament to the good financial management and control systems that we have in place. Overall, we're predicting a positive position this year, but need to be cautious as we face financial uncertainty entering into our next financial year. And finally, in summary, we will have projected reserves at the end of the year of 22,306,000, and that is 2.94 million higher than the initial budget which we set out in the medium-term financial plan. Move the recommendations in paragraph 9 for reasons given in paragraph 10. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any questions to Councillor Johnson? No, I can't see any hands up. Is that agreed? Thank you. Right, item number 13. Acquisition of land at Snipe Lane, and there is a part 3 item attached to this. Are there any questions on the part 3 item? No, in that case we will just move them both together. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The report focuses on 11.16 acres of land in Snipe Lane. This will allow early completion of the existing compulsory purchase order and subsequently the start of the Council's joint venture to build 449 new homes for sale and Council use. I move the report as recommended in paragraph 7 for the reasons given in paragraph 8. Thank you, Chair.
Have we got a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any questions on the report? Councillor Curry.
Yes, thank you. I believe that there was something went to planning for a number of houses on Snipe Lane. Is it on this a piece of land that we're now acquiring after planning permission has been given, or is it on a different part of land, which is the white area, I presume, on the map?
Ian Williams, could you respond to that one?
Certainly, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Curry, this is additional land. The planning permission which was approved is outside of the land that we're talking about in this particular report. This is additional land to the west of the site.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No, I can't see any hands up. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 14, schedule of transactions, and again we have a part 3 item attached to this. Are there any questions on the part 3 part of this? No, so we'll approve them both together. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. The report demonstrates the continual action by the Council to support rail heritage and the commitment to the 2025 centenary of the Darlington and Stockton Railway. This transaction is of particular interest as it refers to the Pease private residence, where the agreement was reached with George Stevenson in April 1821. I move the report, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any questions on the report? No. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 15, membership changes. Are there any membership changes? No, it doesn't look like it. Item 16, supplementary items. We don't have any supplementary items. Sorry, 17 questions. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Harker.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I have 2 questions, if I may. My first question is a question for Councillor Clark. And it relates to an issue that was raised at last council. If you recall, Councillor Wallace expressed concern over the fact that we still have school children who do not have access to a laptop, essential once again during lockdown. Can I thank you for your constructive answer? In particular, you made a commitment to work on a cross-party basis to lobby government on this very important matter. You shortly after council gave members an update on the numbers, and can I again thank you for that update. I believe Councillor Wallace replied to that email and made some suggestions as to how we could possibly work together to lobby on this matter. As I understand, Councillor Wallace hasn't had a reply to his suggestions as yet. So my question today is, I just wanted to ask what plans you are putting into place to enable us to jointly lobby government on this particularly important matter. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right, well, at the moment, we're gathering information from all school settings as to the new allocations that have been made and the extra requests that have been made by the schools for IT devices and dongles, etc. So that information should be available probably tomorrow, possibly Thursday, at which point I'll be sharing that information. However, I can say that the Education Village have recently received an increased allocation of laptops and dongles, which the head is extremely pleased about. So as soon as I've got the information, I will share that with members, and we'll take it from there to see what the situation is.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Harker, your second question.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. This question, I'm not too sure who needs to pick it up. It also relates back to a previous council meeting. If you recall, we agreed unanimously a motion to do with universal credit. In agreeing to that resolution, there were 2 things agreed would come out of it. One was that we would write to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister expressing our concern and asking that the £20 increase be made permanent. And secondly, we made a commitment to work with other local government organisations to form a coalition to pressure government to make that change permanent. could I ask that members be given sight of the letter that presumably has been sent to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister by now? And secondly, could somebody explain what work has been put into place on the second point about working together with other local government organisations to pressure governments to make that change permanent?
Thank you, Councillor Harker. Yes, I will send a copy of the letter. The letter went off a couple of days after the council meeting, so yes, I will send a copy of that letter to all members. On the second issue, working with coalition with other local authorities, I will have to get back to you on that, because obviously lots of things have intervened since then, but I will get back to you on that. Okay, any more questions? No, in that case, thank you very much indeed, everybody, for your attendance. And I do apologise. It's very distracting when you get messages right across the front of your screen. Hopefully my connection is fine now, just as the meeting's finished, but I'll have to check this because I did have problems last week as well. I don't know whether it's a particular problem with my system or in the area, but I do apologise, obviously, for the distraction. But thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.